What's up, guys? Let's talk about some of my favorite $400 smartphones. We're going to be going over 5 of them, and we're going to start with the S21 Ultra. I absolutely love this phone. I think this is the best phone on the list, one of the best deals of this year as well. So in the US, this phone is around 430 bucks on Amazon used refurbished and on eBay. I absolutely love this phone. The design on here, a lot of people prefer this one over the S22 Ultra as far as the camera cutout and as far as it not being as boxy. I actually did a full video. If you guys want to check that out, you can type it in the search bar. This one also has stylus support as well too. Of course, it's not built in, but it's aluminum frame, glass back. It's IP68 dust and water resistant on here as well too. It has a really beautiful display at 6.8 inches. It's dynamic AMOLED, 120 hertz HDR10 plus, gets up to 1500 nits peak brightness, very bright display, and it's a 1440p resolution with 515 for the PPI. Basically a beautiful top-notch flagship display. Also, what makes this phone really great is that I think it's easier to hold than the S22 Ultra as well too. I really like the screen design on here, not being as boxy, and it has a slight curve. It's not as dramatic as the S22 as well. This phone, it did get the Android 13 update. I will show you guys that and update you guys on all of the phones that got the update. This one has the Snapdragon AAA processor and the Adreno 660. Not only that, but this phone also will get the same software treatment as the S22 Ultra as well too. So it has a pretty long lifespan. The AAA processor is pretty good as far as power wise. It is a very fast processor. It's typically going to give you basically flagship performance doing anything with this phone. Yes, it can get a little bit hot during long periods of gaming, but overall I'm not a huge gamer, so I've never really had that issue. But you also get 256 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM, and again, it varies on the model that you get. They do have 128 gig. This phone has stereo speakers which sound really good, very good bass quality, really loud, good vibration motors on here. The under the display fingerprint sensor is on board. All of the additional features are on board as far as Samsung desktop support and everything like that. This phone, it does have still a world-class camera system. So it's got a 108 megapixel standard, a 10 megapixel periscope telephoto that does 10x, and then you have a 10 megapixel telephoto that does 3x, and then you also have a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It has a macro mode. It can shoot in 8K 24, and then it has a 40 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. Alright, so basically you're still getting top-notch quality shots. I did this comparison with the S22 Ultra. You still basically get the same shots as the newer phone. So you're getting a flagship quality camera, that crazy zoom at 100 times zoom, and just crazy detail as far as the megapixels are concerned here. Alright, so the battery life on this phone is pretty good. Now, it's not the craziest, but you are going to get pretty decent battery life on here. I can get 6 hours pretty easy on this phone. You have 25-watt charging with wireless and reverse wireless charging. So overall, I think it's a pretty good deal. So the next phone we're going to talk about is the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. So this is a very awesome phone, and this phone still is kind of expensive. I thought this would be more in the $300 price point, but no, this phone is still around the $400, $430 price point, and it's simply because it has SD card support. So it's the last actual real Note with a built-in stylus with SD card support. That's why they can sort of keep the price at where it is right now, because there's a large demand for this phone and because a lot of people like SD card support, right? You still have a really good designer here, stainless steel frame, glass back, IP68, dust and water resistant. The built-in stylus is here, and it's a very big phone at 6.9 inches. It's a 6.9 inch dynamic AMOLED display, 120 hertz HDR10 plus. It's also a 1440p display, 496 for the PPI, but you can only use 120 hertz at HD, so you can't use it at the full HD or the quad HD. So just do remember that. So this phone is getting Android 13. I haven't got it on mine yet, but it will get it, and that will be the last major OS update for this phone, unfortunately. You do have the Snapdragon 865 chip on here, and basically this phone is still blazing fast. I did a gaming test. If you guys want to check that out, just type it in the search bar. It still plays anything that you throw at it at high settings, no problem. And it also does pretty good with heat as well too. I think the 855 and 865 do the best when it comes to, you know, maintaining heat and stuff like that. So this phone does have micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM on here, so you're pretty much set when it comes to storage. And you also have very good stereo speakers on here, great bass quality on this phone as well too, pretty good vibration motor. And then you also have NFC under the display fingerprint sensors, very fast, and you know, all the bells and whistles are still here as far as Samsung desktop support and all the software that you get with One UI. Basically this phone has honestly a really good camera setup still. It's a 108 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel periscope telephoto that does 5x, and then it does 50 times hybrid zoom with a 12 megapixel ultra wide. This also shoots in 8K 24 and a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. So I think the shots are still extremely good on this phone, even compared to the S21 Ultra and the S22 Ultra. This can still hang in there when taking excellent flagship quality photos. So I don't think you're really missing too much. Like, yes, it doesn't have the 100 times zoom and all that crazy stuff, but it still does a great job when it comes to zooming in shots and stuff like that. So it's an absolutely great experience when it comes to the image quality on this phone. Now, battery life is pretty much on the same boat with the other phones. It has a 4500 milliamp battery, 25 watt charging with wireless and reverse wireless charging. And again, this phone typically will get me around 6 hours of screen on time as well too. So I really like the Note 20 Ultra. It's definitely a great deal for people who want SD card support. All right, now we're going to switch it up and talk about the Pixel 6a. This phone went way under the radar. So you can find this phone for $400 and it's just a great phone. I think it takes some excellent quality shots. Like, I'm really impressed with. I've always been a huge fan of these Pixel phones as far as the image processing goes. This phone has an aluminum frame. It's got a plastic back, but you really wouldn't be able to tell if it's plastic off, you know, just the first impressions of it. It is IP67 dust and water resistant. OLED display on here, 6.1 inches, 1080p, 429 for the PPI. The display is excellent on here, but it just lacks any type of high refresh rate. Google, we need high refresh rate for the mid-range Pixels. Hopefully give us 90 hertz, something like that. But the display is fine, and it's a pretty smooth phone, honestly, for a 60 hertz phone, thanks to the stock version of Android. If you guys don't know, Pixel phones get updates extremely fast. So when Android 14, 15 comes out, you're one of the first people to get it. This has the Google Tensor chip, which is actually a very powerful chip. So this phone does pretty good with benchmarks. It does really good with gaming performance. General performance is just going to be pretty good on this. Now, you do have stereo speakers on here, which are pretty good. Actually have very good bass quality. Vibration motors are pretty good. The under the display fingerprint sensor, it's optical, so it's not like the fastest that I've used, but I don't have, you know, a huge issue with it. It does work. But the highlight with this phone, if you want like basically like flagship quality shots, I still really love the photos that this phone produces. It has a 12.2 megapixel standard with a 12 megapixel ultra wide, 4K 60, and an 8 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080p. A lot of people prefer the Pixel shots over some of the, like, you know, flagship phones like the iPhone 14 and the Galaxy phones. A lot of people were actually preferring this phone when it comes to like the side-by-side camera comparisons, which I have a few on the channel if you want to check that out. Now, the battery life on here is pretty good. It's a 4,410 milliamp battery. No wireless charging on this phone though, so do take that into consideration. Battery life is pretty good on here. I was easily able to get over 6 hours of screen on time with this phone pretty easily. So I really like this phone just strictly for the cameras, honestly, and the Pixel software experience. I think it's still top tier phone here. All right, guys, next is the Galaxy S22, just the standard one. So like I was saying, this phone is also around $400, and I really love this phone strictly because of the size. So if you're somebody who doesn't want an S22 Ultra or S21 Ultra because of the size, this is an easy phone to handle on one hand, and you're not really losing too much if you don't care about the stylus and stuff like that. So this phone has an aluminum frame, it's got glass back, it's also got the IP68 dust and water resistant. It feels excellent in the hand. This is the phone that I love. The screen to body ratio on here is really nice. It just has a beautiful design. In my opinion, it feels really great, like the matte texture and all that. The screen, like I said, 6.1 inches, dynamic AMOLED, 120 hertz, HDR10 plus, 1300 nits peak brightness, 425 for the PPI. Absolutely beautiful display here. Like I said, I really love the edge-to-edge bezels on here. It just feels like a really high quality experience when you're looking at the screen. Now this phone also has Android 13 and is getting the same treatment as the Ultra as far as software experience goes with updates, and also this has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, so you're getting a very fast phone when it comes to multitasking, gaming on here. It's going to be a top-notch, high-quality experience, and for the most part, this phone hasn't really been heating up on me. I got a couple questions about that. No, for the most part, it does not. But again, I'm not a hardcore gamer. I do play games, but it's not for like hours and hours. So this phone does have stereo speakers, which sound great. Great bass quality. NFC is on board. The under the display fingerprint sensor is very fast on here as well too. You can use face unlock as well. The cameras on here are excellent. And that's also one of the great things about this phone is you have a 50 megapixel standard, a 10 megapixel telephoto that does 3x, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It's using 8K24, and a 10 megapixel selfie that's using 4K 60. I think the photos speak for themselves. I did a comparison against like the 14 Pro and a few other phones, and a lot of people were surprised at how good the S22 does. We're just giving you this really great shot with really great colors on here, great dynamic range. I really like the way Samsung does the colors, very vibrant, very alive, a sort of image processing. So this phone again does pretty good with battery life, 3700 milliamp battery, 25 watt charging, wireless, reverse wireless. So you have a pretty good battery experience for the most part with this phone, and overall I just really love this phone. It has pretty much everything you would want. Alright guys, last is the iPhone 12 mini. Now you can find this for around $430, and I really like this phone for anybody who likes really small phones and you want something that's extremely comfortable. This is a phone that's very comfortable. It's got an aluminum frame, it's got glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. One of the smallest displays on this list at 5.4 inches. It's got the XDR OLED display. It gets 1200 nits peak brightness, 1080p 476 for the PPI. Overall, just a really good display as far as quality wise. Even though you do have like the sort of bigger notch on this phone, it still is going to give you a pretty good panel. So this phone does have iOS 16 and it runs on the Apple A14 chip. This phone is blazing fast. It is extremely fast when doing pretty much anything. It crushes it in benchmarks still. So whatever you're doing on this phone, gaming, multitasking, is going to be an excellent, very fast experience. You have 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on the base model. And then you have stereo speakers, which sound great, really good bass quality. NFC is on board, Face ID works well on here. This is still able to give you some top tier quality shots. It has a 12 megapixel standard with a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It's shooting 4K 60 with a 12 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K 60. And like I said, I didn't really see a big difference from this phone and the 13 mini, so I would say it still takes basically the same photos, still gonna give you high quality shots. And also, this phone, now this is where this phone kind of lacks. It has a 2227 milliamp battery with 20 watt wired charging, and it has the MagSafe and wireless charging. So I was only able to get around 4 hours, 30 minutes of screen on time. Now, the 13 mini, if you pay a little bit more, or you're actually going to pay a lot more, but if you pay more, that has better battery life. But this phone, yeah, you might not be able to get through the day if you're sort of like doing heavier stuff on your phone for sure. So take that into consideration. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.